John Dean worked alongside Richard Nixon during the Watergate scandal in the 1970s. Tonight, he's reacting to the secret recordings made in Senator Mitch McConnell's local campaign office.
He talked with WHAS 11's political reporter Joe Arnold, and he's live with more on what John Dean had to say. Joe?
Well, Melissa and Doug, John Dean tells me the only similarity between the Watergate conspiracy and this Watersongate recording, Watersongate, may be bad judgment in recording people.
There's some 14, 15 conversations, depending on how you count them.
30 years after his bombshell Watergate testimony, former White House counsel John Dean says it's a mistake now to compare the Watersongate recording of Mitch McConnell's campaign headquarters to the Watergate taping of the Democratic National Committee.
Mitch McConnell doesn't seem to have a clue what happened during Watergate.
Dean says President Richard Nixon had nothing to do with the bugging operation, only the cover-up. We talked to Dean by phone this afternoon. Is it okay that we record your voice?
You're perfectly welcome to record. I'm quite accustomed to being recorded.
Dean says he watched WHAS 11's story Tuesday that showed the scenario alleged by a local Democrat that two members of Progress Kentucky were in the hallway outside McConnell's campaign strategy meeting and used a phone or a flip cam to capture what they could from outside that meeting.
There's no expectation of privacy in that kind of situation, and the responsibility would have been on McConnell and his people to assure their conversation wasn't drifting into the hall, not on these guys, the fact that it did drift into the hall.
Dean tells me one part of the story does remind him of Richard Nixon, Mitch McConnell's campaign strategy as revealed by the recording.
Richard Nixon was a politician who spared nothing to attack his enemies. Listening to that conversation or reading the transcript of it is a very Nixonian style.
The very familiar voice via the recordings of John Dean. You know, he pleaded guilty back in 1973 to one felony count, serving 4 months, mainly then as a witness for the Watergate prosecution. I asked him about any advice for those parties involved in Watersongate here. He says be careful of obstruction of justice charges by either pushing too hard or by trying to defeat, as he put it, the investigators. Joe Arnold, WHAS 11 News.
Well, the Mitch McConnell campaign continues damage control today, one day after the release of a secret recording, which casts doubt on whether McConnell's campaign manager really supports him.
Jesse Benton is talking exclusively tonight with WHAS 11's political editor Joe Arnold. And Joe, what do you have to say? You know, he did say these words, caught on tape.
And he certainly verifies that his voice was captured accurately, Doug and Melissa. McConnell hired Ron Paul's former presidential campaign manager to run a presidential-level campaign for his Senate re-election. Well, now Jesse Benton is working to climb out of a presidential-scale mess. His voice caught on tape saying he was, quote, holding his nose for 2 years while he managed McConnell's campaign. But Benton tells me today he did not mean it.
Well, you know, I said it. It was just such a stupid thing to say. I'm not sure quite why I said it. I was talking to a hardcore Ron Paul supporter that I guess they don't quite understand what we're trying to build here.
His voice at times shaking, McConnell campaign manager Jesse Benton says he didn't mean what he said about his job during a January phone conversation secretly recorded by a Ron Paul supporter.
Between you and me, I'm sort of holding my nose for 2 years because what we're doing here is going to be a big benefit to Rand in 16. So that's my long vision.
But it was just so dumb. I don't feel that way at all. You know, being asked to manage Senator McConnell's campaign is one of the great honors of my life, and I believe in the man very much.
Benton acknowledges the controversy could damage the McConnell campaign, which is fostering a carefully built alliance with Rand Paul and Tea Party groups. Benton was Rand Paul's 2010 campaign manager and now has to convince Tea Party supporters his support of the 5-term incumbent McConnell is equally sincere. But first,
it's one of the hardest conversations I ever had.
Benton had to talk to McConnell.
He wasn't angry, he wasn't upset, but I could see the hurt in his eyes, and he asked me, you know, how I could say something like that, and I just didn't have a good answer. I apologized from the bottom of my heart, and I told him it's not what I believe, and that I'm here because I believe in him.
McConnell's campaign attempted to mute the controversy Thursday, releasing these photos of Benton and McConnell holding their noses, saying nothing smells worse than Obamacare.
Crack a smile on what was a tough day, and quite frankly, I think it was Mitch wanting to show that he was standing by me.
Facing challenges from Allison Lundergan Grimes on the left and Matt Bevin on the right, Benton says he did not expect, but is now braced for personal attacks on him.
There is a huge microscope on us. We're a constant target, and that's what Mitch told me yesterday. He told me that we've got to be ready for even more of this stuff.
We should point out Benton is married to Ron Paul's granddaughter. That's Rand Paul's niece. He tells me McConnell's support and vouching for Rand Paul is important for Paul's presidential aspirations, and he hopes that a substantial part of McConnell's campaign operation will eventually join Paul's campaign. Joe Arnold, WHAS 11 News.
Tonight, U.S. Senate candidate Allison Lundergan Grimes is speaking publicly for the first time since her appearance at Fancy Farm.
The Democratic U.S. Senate candidate is at the Kentucky State Fair with her Grannies for Grimes tour.
WHAS 11's political editor Joe Arnold is live at the fair tonight. He's been asking Grimes to get more specific about her concerns with the Affordable Health Care Act. Joe?
Well, as that debate rages right now in Congress over how to fund and implement the Affordable Care Act, Grimes is saying that she would not delay all of it, but parts of it. And today she actually drew a link between the fatty foods sold here at the Kentucky State Fair and the need for seniors to have health care access.
This race is deeply personal for me.
At the first Grannies for Grimes event, Allison Lundergan Grimes saying much is at stake for senior citizens in the Senate race.
This is an initiative about making sure that we are keeping our promises to Kentucky seniors, our honored citizens, that we are standing up to protect the promises of Social Security and Medicare. And
because the Affordable Care Act changes Medicare payment formulas, cutting an estimated $700 billion from Medicare over the next 10 years, Republicans argue Obamacare will hurt senior citizens. So I asked Grimes, does she agree? And if so, whether the health care expansion should be delayed.
I'm troubled with certain aspects of the Affordable Care Act, but we're here at the State Fair, and if there's 3 reasons why Kentuckians, especially our seniors, need access to affordable health care coverage, you just have to look over to the right where you see the donut burger, the chili cheesesteak, and the covered French fries that are here. There are 640,000 Kentuckians who previously did not have access to insurance, and as Senator McConnell himself has acknowledged, there are some good things, but we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Her 83-year-old grandmother confident Grimes' message will win Kentucky over.
100%.
Now, Grimes says her concerns about the ACA include making sure that businesses aren't overregulated and also that employers are being given incentives to provide health care as opposed to being encouraged to cut hours or cut employees. Now, coming up tonight at 11 o'clock, what Grimes said today about the Republican controversy between Matt Bevin, Mitch McConnell, and Matt Bevin's LinkedIn profile online. Live here at the Kentucky State Fair, Joe Arnold, WHAS 11 News.
Well, now we bring you the dance of the politicians and the reporters who were assigned to cover them. A candidate's mission is to stay on message, often regardless of the questions that they are asked. And they often have to dance around those questions. WHAS 11 political reporter Joe Arnold has the questions that are going unanswered these days by the candidates in next year's heated U.S. Senate race.
Senator Mitch McConnell's message is that he wants to repeal Obamacare, but after he told an Eastern Kentucky reporter there were a handful of good things about the Affordable Care Act, both his Republican primary opponent, Matt Bevin, and Democrat Allison Lundergan Grimes have seized on the comment. I tried to ask him about it yesterday. Senator, on Obamacare, can you just clarify the parts you think are good about it, what you would want to keep, Senator McConnell?
Well, what Senator Paul said I agree with. What we need to do is pull it out root and branch. That's our goal. This is one of the few issues that it seems to me we've got 100% Republican unity.
Grimes, meanwhile, was asked about the sensitive issue of coal.
Do you believe that the burning of fossil fuels contributes to climate change, and how would you address that?
Well, I tell you, we're going to have the next 15 months to discuss this campaign. Today I'm here as Secretary of State in my official capacity and excited to be a part of the Farm Bureau's event.
Grimes was also asked whether the endorsement of the pro-abortion rights group Emily's List was a net positive or negative in Kentucky.
Well, I am obviously a practicing Catholic, and like I said, we will have plenty of time to discuss the issues in this campaign. But
Grimes' campaign says she's for the separation of church and state and supportive of the Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade. Joe Arnold, WHAS 11 News.